कॉन्सर्ट्स तो आपने बहुत देखे होंगे, but this
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu. We'll be broadcasting live from the World Economic Forum Meet 2026 here in Davos, Switzerland. It's very much an annual tradition for NDTV. We've been reporting here for more than 2 decades. But I can tell you that this is perhaps the most consequential World Economic Forum meet. The US President is going to be here day after tomorrow. Ties between Europe and America are clearly strained. What is Donald Trump going to say? What are the implications for America, for Europe, and indeed the rest of the world? But before we get to that, and we've got great conversations with Ian Bremmer, Sir Martin Sorrell, and others, I thought I'd present news from Davos in this very different way. World Economic Forum in Davos 2026, and as always, NDTV is right here. We've got skiers coming up by the side. Right over here, it's all happening. We are up one of the slopes. Now, I don't ski myself, but look at them. They're having an absolute blast. I can tell you what we're going to be doing is even better. We're going to be jumping off the hillside. That's right, jumping off the hillside. So that's where we're headed over there. We're going to get kitted up soon as we get set to paraglide to bring you a world view like a bird up in the skies around Davos. What's it all about this year? So what we're doing now, essential part, kitting up before we hit the thermals which we hope to get, fly around, give you a bird's eye view of Davos. This is actually the most hairy part of the entire experience, running and then getting airborne. I'm a heavyweight camper, so this is going to be quite interesting. All right, Joel? Yep. Wow! That is amazing! Alright, well here we are above the world. Well, not quite. Certainly above Davos and the World Economic Forum. It's going to be a fabulous experience over the days ahead. Well, this is becoming a bit of an NDTV tradition. The last couple of years, in fact just once before this, I've gotten onto a paraglider with Joel, who's among the finest in all of Switzerland, to get a bird's eye view of Davos, but also allow you, the viewer, to know about some of the key themes over here, one of the most beautiful spots anywhere on Earth. This time, Davos 2026, the World Economic Forum, comes at a time when there is unprecedented chaos. Whether it's Greenland, whether it's Iran, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's trade or sanctions. The US President Donald Trump is going to be here. There are going to be 65 heads of state, and I don't know the last time there have been as many. For India, this is a critical opportunity to talk about the India story. Whether it's brand building or bringing in serious business, the world's business leaders are here as well, not just political leaders. So, over the next couple of days, we'll be tracking all the major moves over here. Political, economic, and a lot more. But for the moment, I can tell you, I am having a blast. Aviation and flight has always been a dream for me. I've had the chance of being at the controls of fighter jets, but I've never done something like this. This is a lot more raw in one sense. And the controls are surprisingly precise. So it works exactly the way it's supposed to. A gentle pull, small adjustments, and you are on your way. That was super fun. Yeah, I'm good. Oh, this was absolutely insane. I was able to fly a little bit myself.
Awesome.
And we did some sharp turns, a couple of rolls. Great fun. Thanks, Jules. Some would say that this episode of the World Economic Forum in Davos 2026 is perhaps the most consequential WEF that we are seeing in decades. The world is truly at a crossroads. To talk a little bit about that, Ian Bremmer, it's great to interview you face to face. We're often virtually linked. He's a political scientist. He's an author. He has founded the Eurasia Group. He looks at risk from a geostrategic perspective. Thanks very much for being with us. Donald Trump, day after tomorrow. Do you expect him to really redefine the stage with what he says over here in Davos?
I think it's always wise not to predict what Trump is going to do on a given day.
Right.
But what he is doing is redefining America's role in the global order. He is not committed to the U.S. Principally supporting a collective security system with its allies. He's not committed to supporting U.S. free trade architecture globally. He's not committed to supporting rule of law. And the Europeans most rely on that. So this is a crisis for Europe. It's a crisis for the transatlantic relationship. Anything he says is going to be seen in that context by everyone here.
In your latest report, you used the word 2020. You said that 2026 would be a tipping point.
Yeah.
So, and that is entirely associated with Trump and his politics. Is that right?
It really is. I mean, for so long, coming here to Davos for almost 20 years now, we've talked about China rising and maybe the U.S. and China being involved in a big conflict. That's not what's driving this at all. What's driving it is that the United States is saying it no longer wants to provide the leadership that it has been providing for decades now, particularly since the Soviet Union collapsed. And that brings us to what I call a G0 world, a disorder, a lack of global leadership. The Americans are unwilling, and no other country or group of countries are willing and capable to fill the vacuum. And the level of uncertainty that causes, the unmooring of traditional geopolitical relationships. We saw that with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney traveling to China, a new strategic partnership. We see that with the EU-Mercosur trade deal, which has been announced, wouldn't have happened otherwise. I mean, that's the tipping point that we're seeing.
Yeah. You've also spoken about the Donroe Doctrine. It's essentially part of what you're talking about. But this is a new America with new policies, insular in a very big way, some would suggest. And the Donroe Doctrine, it's sort of a take on the Monroe Doctrine, is how you define this phase, this era, right?
I don't know that it's insular. I think it's unilateral. Insular implies that the Americans lack ambition. And while the U.S. is prioritizing control over its own backyard as defined by the president, I wouldn't say that the United States is uninterested in the rest of the world. The Indians know this. Iran, Trump was almost ready to launch strikes on Iran in the last few days and only held off really because they didn't yet have enough military equipment in the region, but it's now going there. So I think insular probably implies a limitation that we don't see.
So let's talk a little bit about Iran before we speak about Greenland, the hot topics as they were. Some would suggest that action hasn't already taken place against Iran militarily because executions have been halted, if indeed they have been. That's his belief. Do you believe that there is still some road for talk, compromise, call it what you want, between America and Iran?
I think that there's still time for talk, but Supreme Leader Khamenei has so far shown an unwillingness to provide meaningful concessions on the issues that would move the needle with the Americans on the ballistic missile program, on uranium enrichment and inspections, and on provision of support for the so-called axis of resistance, the Iranian proxies around the region. Absent that, I do think that the likelihood of U.S. military intervention directly in Iran once the American military is in place, especially to be able to adequately defend troops and Israel in the region, I think that likelihood is going way up. We are not out of the woods on Iran.
How would that actually impact the protesters on the ground? It's one thing to hit the Iranian military, the military installations, but how would that necessarily link up, unless there's a decapitation strike?
Well, even if there is a decapitation strike, that doesn't mean that you're getting rid of the Iranian regime. I mean, you basically just had a decapitation strike in Venezuela.
Yeah.
It's the same regime in place. And so what does that mean for the Venezuelan people? Well, I don't yet see a road for democracy. I still think the regime will be repressive. In Iran, I mean, there's already been thousands of Iranian civilians unarmed
Yes.
killed.
Yes.
We've seen it before. We saw it in 2022. We saw it in 2009. And I expect we're going to see it again. This is a brutal and repressive regime that most of us
With or without Khamenei?
With or without Khamenei, in my view. Yes. I mean, you still have the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. You still have the Basij. It is a relatively well-paid, trained group that is very comfortable with using repression to ensure that they maintain a monopoly of state power.
Why does Trump want Greenland?
I wish I knew. Why does Trump want his name on things? Why does Trump want the Kennedy Center to be called the Trump Kennedy Center?
Yeah.
Why is he so desperate to have a Nobel Peace Prize? Why does he put his name? I mean, historically, his life has been, his greatest success has been about promoting his brand. Mm-hmm. It's been about how, Trump, even on things he doesn't own, mm-hmm. he wants them to be named Trump, and mm-hmm. he gains some benefit from that. Mm-hmm. You and I speak for myself. I would not feel any particular growth in self-worth from having my name on something I didn't do anything for.
Right.
But Trump doesn't feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so for Trump, being able to own Greenland, and he's seen it on the map, and it looks a lot bigger with the Mercator projection
yes.
than it really is.
Yeah.
He wants to say it's his.
Mm-hmm.
Look, everyone I've spoken to in the administration
mm-hmm.
Does not have a good reason mm-hmm. for why you need to own Greenland to ensure the security concerns that the Americans have. The Danish prime minister, who I know very well, mm-hmm. has already said many times to the mm-hmm. Americans, all of your security concerns, we are prepared to negotiate. Yeah. The Americans have been unwilling to negotiate those concerns with her. Yeah. So obviously, this is something more existential for Trump, and this is something involving his own personal ego. And, when the interests of the president as a person become different from the interests of a country, you have a real problem.
Yeah.
And that's where we are on this issue.
So I'm just going to read out one sentence in the joint statement issued by the leaders of Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the UK, which I really feel summarizes where the relationship is. Tariff threats undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral. We'll continue to stand united and coordinated in our response. We are committed to upholding our sovereignty. It's unbelievable that European countries are telling America about something which is the bedrock of NATO, preventing any outside attack and ensuring that collective sovereignty remains. Is this the beginning of the end of NATO?
If you had read that statement without any context, you'd assume it was about Russia.
Yeah, that's true.
Having invaded Ukraine.
That's true.
And the fact that the Europeans now feel like they can't trust their critical ally is an existential threat to NATO. And if Trump persists on this path, it will be the end of NATO, if Trump persists on this path. Now, Trump has shown in the past that he can say things and he can back away from them. He talked about Canada being a 51st state. He doesn't talk about that anymore. This is a truly stupid thing.
Yeah.
And it's a fight that Trump should not want to have. It's very unpopular in the United States.
Yes.
Americans don't know why the U.S. should want Greenland. They certainly don't want the Americans spending lots of money on Greenland as opposed to spending it on the average American. I mean, Redlanders and Bluelanders in the U.S. matter a lot more to Trump than Greenlanders, right?
Yeah,
so I think it's a mistake, but Trump has to be convinced. And part of the problem is that Trump is not only convinced he's right, and he's not getting any younger, but his own closest advisors are reluctant to criticize him. They're reluctant to tell him, sir, we think you're making a big mistake here. So that does mean that you can get yourself in some trouble.
Venezuela, some would say, is effectively a vassal state of the United States at this juncture. In terms of big oil moving into Venezuela and the American economy gaining substantially, are we actually seeing that work according to Trump's plans already?
Oh, I think that the military operation in Venezuela was an extraordinary success. The U.S. is very good at that in a way that the Russians aren't, the Chinese aren't. 6 months of planning, spectacular success, no American servicemen or women killed. And there's Maduro and his wife in prison in New York. So that's obviously a win. And it's popular in Latin America. Most countries, the populations say we support that. But this is not regime change. No. It's regime roulette. They spun the wheel, and now they've got new people from the same regime. But Trump has shown credibility in taking action against them. And the military is still right there, right off the coast. So the question is, how much are they willing to do? On oil, they'll do a lot. On a transition of power to the people and to a democracy, not so much. So what really, and of course Marco Rubio wants the latter. And many Venezuelan emigres who live in the United States and vote for Trump also want the latter. So I don't think it'll be enough for Trump just to have a new authoritarian state that supports the U.S. On oil and on drugs. They're going to have to actually do more in sharing power, and that's going to be a challenging, longer-term question.
India and the United States have been talking about a trade deal now for a long period of time. It's moved, then it's stopped, it's moved. It's nowhere close to being signed as we speak today. Perhaps it might take a few more months if it happens at all. There's a new relationship between New Delhi and China. Some would say that the relationship between India and the United States was premised on a common concern around China. Is that dynamic also changing with or without a trade deal?
You know, at least a little bit it is, but part of it is because the Indians are in a better position to push back. There is, sort of a spectrum of how countries fall between FAFO, fool around and find out, and taco, Trump always chickens out. Right. And on the FAFO side,
that's the headline right there, but carry on.
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear. That's how Trump sees the world. And, FAFO, you've got, for example, the Venezuelans and the Ukrainians, and taco, you've got the Chinese and the Russians. Right. And it turns out India is actually more on the taco scale. Why? Number one, Modi's a very popular leader who's been in place for 10 years plus and understands that he's going to be there longer than Trump. Also because India is growing at 7-8% this year, and the trade relationship between India and the U.S. isn't that important. At the end of the day, it's not going to break India the way it would Mexico or Canada or the Europeans. So, this isn't so urgent for Modi that he has to respond to everything that Trump wants. And I think that where you are on that spectrum matters a lot.
Absolutely.
In fact, India, a little more taco.
True. There's just been this IMF revision of India's GDP numbers. That's gone up to 7.3%, despite the fact that sanctions are at 50%. If it goes up to 75% because of our economic relationship with Iran, then it could be anything. I mean, who knows what will happen. But for the moment, the Indian economy appears to be fairly resilient. So let's see how far that goes. But I guess...
And it's reforming.
True, it is.
Again, look at the insurance companies, private sector investment, nuclear, private sector investment. I mean, lots of things that India continues to do over a decade now that make it more attractive to international capital investment. This really matters. Most democracies around the world do not have that capacity.
Ian Bremmer, it's always wonderful to speak to you. Thank you once again, and it's great to see you face-to-face here in Davos. I would suggest that day after tomorrow is going to be one of the biggest and most important days of the year. Donald Trump over here is going to come with a big message. What's it going to be? We're going to have to wait to find out. One way or the other, by Friday, that's when the World Economic Forum wraps up proceedings, we will have a pretty clear idea of where the world is headed. That might sound dramatic, but in the context of what we are seeing in the US relationship with Europe and indeed the rest of the world, this is going to be quite significant. Donald Trump is going to be speaking on Wednesday. Sir Martin Sorrell joins me now in our studios in Davos.
I think you've been very optimistic, Vishnu. I'm sure it will be just as messy on Friday.
That's true.
As it is on Monday. I don't think we'll sort out much. We'll see.
What do you expect Donald Trump would focus on Wednesday, given the fact that if you look at Greenland, he insists he has to have it?
Well, I think he'll probably focus on that. There'll be some focus, obviously, on Venezuela and Iran. But I think probably the top of the... He's put the proverbial cat amongst the EU pigeons, hasn't he? The Greenland cat amongst the EU pigeons, and they're all flurrying around. I mean, I don't think our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was due to come to Davos, but there was some speculation that he might come to support Rachel Reeves, because Nigel Farage is going to be here. So we'll have to see. Look, but I don't know whether anything firm will come out of this week. This is going to be a very American-dominated Davos.
Yeah.
Larry Fink is co-chairman with Andre Hoffman. USA has taken a house out of the church here in the village for the first time, I think. It's the biggest delegation, I think, cabinet ministers, Rubio, Lutkin. I mean, there's
Lutnick is here as well.
And so there's going to be a lot of people here. So we shall see how it plays out. But I think President Trump thrives on creating this sort of disruption. Steve Bannon calls it, what did he call it, flooding the zone. And he's been flooding the zone for the last few weeks, creating news or developing the news in all sorts of ways. Whether we'll get resolution or not, I don't know. I mean, I was a little bit bemused yesterday. I went to a group of Asian people, and there was a suggestion that, Greenland was the sacrificial lamb for peace.
Right.
So we shall see. But he tends to put an extreme position out there and settle for something less.
Yeah.
And whether, total ownership. He is a real estate guy.
Yeah.
He does believe in owning real estate. And look, I have to say that there is something in the Greenland position, given its geography, given its proximity to the States, given Russian and Chinese interest or potential interest in it from a strategic point of view. I always remember when in Iceland, when the Americans withdrew, George Bush Jr. withdrew the Americans from the Reykjavik base earlier than anticipated, and the lease ended. I think they had a lease on it.
Yeah.
The country that made the first indicative inquiry about using that disregarded base was China.
Yeah, that's true.
So the Chinese and the Russians
Canada
are very acute.
Canada has just struck a trade deal or a big deal.
Well, this is the downside of Trump's policy, which is he has driven Carney into Chinese arms, and President Xi has done a good job. I thought President Trump's reaction on Friday night when he got on his helicopter in Washington, I think it was, good luck to Carney. If you can negotiate a deal with China, go ahead and do it. But that, I think, was a little bit of sour grapes because Carney has gone and done that.
India's projected to grow.
Maybe Carney should be the UK Prime Minister.
All right. Take your word for that. 7.3% is the projected GDP growth of India. It's been revised upwards by the IMF.
For last year and then this year.
This is despite tariffs.
Yeah.
And that's significant in my mind because 50% tariffs already exist. That can go up even more if India doesn't stop all equations with Iran. We have a port over there, we trade with them, etc., etc. But even at 50%, the fact that India is the fastest growing large economy in the world, emerging economy in the world.
Well, it's the largest growing, it's the fastest growing economy that the World Bank looks at, and not just for last year, but for this year and for next year. So 7, 6, and maybe they'll have to revise the number up. But no, India is on fire and is an alternative in an Asian context for China. If you have a big position in China and you're worried about being over-indexed to China, India is the next best alternative. The other thing, of course, is that Indian entrepreneurs are now spreading their wings
all over Davos.
They've always had a big presence in Davos, but particularly big.
There are curry counters over here out, along the promenade. I never saw that before.
Swiss curry. But whatever. But, India is in an extremely strong position. And I think Modi has done a great job for brand India and the positioning of India as between playing both ends off against the middle, as many do. Saudi, biggest defense partner is the US, biggest trade partner is China. So Trump's policy, and you see it, as you said, with Carney in Canada, the downside of it is it's going to drive people. And just going back to China for a second, the other thing that's happened, which is amazing, is China's exports.
Yes.
Post-Liberation Day, post-tariffs, they've expanded. They're at a record high. US is probably at a record low. It's gone down to 11% of Chinese exports. But LATAM, Africa, APAC, Middle East, and Europe. Europe's the battleground.
Yeah.
And maybe the downside of the Greenland push or putsch, the downside of that is that it drives the EU. You know, Germany has just been in China. Keir Starmer is going to China in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
There's this big controversy about the Chinese embassy in the middle of London, you know, next to one of our big cable highways. We'll have to see how it plays out. But the downside of the American view, I mean, if America is looking for world domination and is not prepared to accept a G2 world, you know, a sort of US-China world, which apparently it is not, the downside is it drives people away.
Indeed it does. So Martin, thank you very much for speaking to us. Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. So Martin Sorrell talking about several of the larger issues, you know, contextualizing Donald Trump's politics within international relations, the impact on China, the impact on India, and perhaps most significantly where Europe stands in this rather challenging hour. We leave it there. Thanks very much for being with us.
I don't sugarcoat. I shoot straight and tell you stories the way they need to be told. Unfiltered, unafraid, unmissable. That's how I roll. Watch me, Priyanka Deo, on NDTV World. Namaste.
All right, team, our new order show is ready. Now we need a promo. Something cool, something sharp.
Well, I'm sure we'll be having outstanding reviews, solid suggestions,
Expert advice, the latest trends. It's a lot simpler. We'll help people make the right auto decisions. It's got the cool stuff, geeky stuff, serious stuff, all of it, so that you can discover, decide, and drive. I'm Siddharth Sharma, and I am your Automate.
Facing unprecedented headwinds, chaos, and great global uncertainty.
In times like these, clarity matters.
Davos is known as the playground of the global elite, and this time round will perhaps be one of the most important meetings in recent years.
Geopolitics to technology, we highlight conversations reshaping the world.
And what do these meta trends mean for India with the biggest global voices? Watch our live coverage of the World Economic Forum at Davos, NDTV Ignite, all week long, only on the NDTV network.
They argue, I conclude. They deflect, I drill down. This isn't a free-for-all. It's a reckoning. No filler, no fog. Only the facts and where they lead. Every night at 9, the case closes because the buck stops here.
Mumbai are bringing our first India tour in your city. Rag on with Shankar Ehsan Loy and Siddharth Mahadevan and Shivam Mahadevan. 5 times melody, 5 times masti with NDTV Good Times. Go grab your tickets on Live Your City by Fever.
Watch Jai Jawan with me this Republic Day only on NDTV.
The world today stands at an edge, with old certainties making way for unfamiliar choices. Climate stress, a fractured world, economic headwinds, technology in reset. From freezing geopolitics to the heart of the world's most consequential conversations, we take you inside the world's thinking room, unleashing the spirit of dialogue. Watch our live coverage of the World Economic Forum at Davos, NDTV Ignite, all week long, only on the NDTV network.
इनको यहाँ से जाना ही होगा।
जय मां दुर्गा!
There is no bigger battle in 2026. And nobody has reported Bengal like I have. Buckle up for an unforgettable election thriller. Will the BJP breach Mamta's fortress?
TMC जावे, BJP आसपे.
Can Didi fight off her life's biggest challenge?
বিজেপি ডাবল ইঞ্জিন সরকার এই লড়াই বাঁচতে হবে।
Battleground Bengal with Manogya Loiwal.
The world in a state of complete turmoil, perhaps more than ever before since the Second World War. This year at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, the world will be grappling with critical issues. There are more global leaders here than perhaps we've ever seen in several decades.